Welcome to the Masterful Man podcast. This is the show for men who want to explore and embody the principles, practices, and personal power that allow them to thrive amidst today's chaotic world and lead a meaningful life.
Hello and welcome to the Masterful Man podcast. Another week with Nathaniel, Fabi, and Adam. Appreciate you all joining in. And today we wanted to kind of take a look under the hood of what we do in Masterful Man every single week and the importance of being able to check in with yourself. So a little bit of a backstory to this. Every single week on our coaching call, we have weekly check-ins. And the fellas in Masterful Man are coming to the check-in, and they have 3 minutes to either ask for support, go through their week, give us a download of what happened the past week, dive into something sometimes deep, right, in those 3 minutes. And what we wanted to talk about today is how you can do that process with yourself or with your own group or with your boys, right? And how important it is to on a daily basis to kind of have these little check-in spots so that you can have a weekly download with yourself or your boys or your men's group. So in order to kick that off, let's start with Nathaniel. What are your thoughts on this and how do you go about doing that for yourself?
Yeah, I love this topic. I think probably most of the world's problems are the result of men who couldn't check in with themselves. On like a grandiose sense, but just on a day-to-day sense for your average Joe, it's like um, when men get stressed, when we get overwhelmed, it's easier to kind of disassociate, to compartmentalize, to set things aside. Like, oh, maybe that's not a big deal right now. I'll deal with that when I really need to, yada, yada, yada. And that's a slippery slope before things starting to kind of build up, right? And it's a slippery slope to just literally suppression, right? And you're just like repressing parts of your life to yourself, and not letting yourself feel things or come to terms with things or make decisions about things that you need to, and that builds up in everybody. I think most people resonate with the premise of like having open loops and how annoying and stressful and bothersome that ultimately ends up being. And I think a big part of the value of knowing how to check in with yourself, and with other people, is that it allows you to close loops on the spot if they are there, because you have the chance to make decisions about things. But it also allows you to acknowledge things that are present and are open, and kind of put them in their appropriate place. Sometimes just actually scheduling, all right, I'm going to work on this open loop tomorrow at noon, can then help you not have that loop open for the rest of today, right? Just that willingness to make that decision about it. So I think there's like a monthly type of check-in guys should have, kind of looking at the month ahead, even a 90-day sort of thing. And then of course staying checked in with like your big vision of like your life and your purpose, what you want to be up to, what you want to create. Weekly makes a lot of sense too, and daily. And then even within a thing, like you go to an event and you kind of check in before you go in, and then you're in the event and you're like wondering how you're feeling. Oh, let me actually check in. And you could check in a few times in one day, depending on what you're needing. I think check-in is very synonymous with presence, right? Being able to like be really present with where you're at, what's going on. So a few of my little notes here that I have as far as what's been valuable for me as far as my relationship with checking in, and what I think can really amplify that opportunity. The first one simply being to do it before you need it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Just like, going grocery shopping when you're hungry, you're going to make some bad decisions. And it's like when you actually really need to check in is when you'll have the most resistance to doing it. So if you've already kind of built that groove and it's like, oh, this is just something I do, this is just a helpful way for me to kind of be clear with myself or to not get too overwhelmed. And maybe you don't like I don't need to check in with myself. Maybe you don't like it being phrased that way. Great. Then just like use this as a way to be on top of your life. Use this as a way to just be like really clear and connected to what the hell's going on and why it might be going on, what you want to do with it, etc. So do it before you need it. And that's as simple as starting a Masterful Man, we teach something called a captain's log. That's been huge for me. That's just a daily process based around that premise of like the captain out at sea, right? It's like day 536, we're running out of sardines, and you're just like logging the data of what is happening. I think that's so powerful from like a journaling or diary sense, because you can just look back at your timeline and go back and see what the data was each day. But it also puts you in this frame of like being the captain of a ship on a mission who needs to track the data. And it's more like you're utilizing that data versus what guys usually do. The way guys usually unconsciously check in is the way they basically shit talk themselves in their head all day. Right? They wake up a little late and they're like, yeah, you did. Of course you did. Well, we're not going to do anything today anyways. Okay, you just checked in with yourself. You kind of just became aware of yourself and then made yourself a victim and didn't do anything with it. And it was all up in your head and you're just thinking about stuff. So the difference is like the captain's writing it down. He's logging it. It's like a real archival asset, right? So to treat it like that and to let your life be this thing you're willing. I first learned this when I started my YouTube channel, 13 years ago. And I was doing the daily vlogging thing before vlogging was even a word. And it was so valuable because I would look back at the video I did a week ago and like catch myself exaggerating something and be like, why did I feel like I needed to do that in that fit? And then I'm thinking about like, oh, I do feel kind of insecure about that topic. Or it was this like direct feedback of just how I'm showing up. And I'm like watching a video of myself. It was absolutely profound. And that got me back into like a sort of journaling diary type of habit then too. So that's always stuck with me and been huge. I met one of the more impactful men's group experiences I've been in many years ago. I met this guy who introduced me to what he called a captain's check-in, which I thought was interesting because I already had this captain's log kind of premise. But he basically said it's about you want to report in on the weather, right? And we have mental weather, emotional weather, physical weather, and social weather. And like those are the things. It's like, so how's the weather up in your head? It's like, oh, it's fucking the weather's bad, dude. It's windy, it's gusty, it's raining, there's storm, there's lightning, there's hail. And you can use the analogies, but it's more discreet. How it's just a fun, simple way to be like, what you've been thinking about lately? What's top of mind? What do you keep ruminating on? Or what have you been excited about? What are you creating up there? Right. And then emotionally, how are you doing? Physically, how are you doing? It blows my mind how often guys don't even, they don't have like a interoception, like they're not in tune, like, oh, my shoulders have been tight this week. Like most guys don't ever come to realize that. It's just like months in and like, yeah, I got this kink. It's just kind of how it is, and they just kind of roll with it versus I feel like this stuff starts to get so subtle and that one little thing that happened this afternoon becomes the subtle kink in your neck that evening as you try to fall asleep. And if you can use a moment like that to actually check in, it's like the body is such a direct feedback loop like that. So having not just like, what am I thinking about, but just how does my body feel? What's the state of my body? If I had to, thank God when a plane lands, somebody has a checklist and is checking all this stuff so the plane can take off again. You land the plane of your body every single day at the end of the day. And do you have a way of being like, oh, how was my body impacted by today? Oh, I got that great workout in. Awesome. I can feel it. Okay, great. Did I drink enough water? Great. Do I feel like I did everything I need to do to support that? Or man, I didn't do shit today. And my body feels restless. Great. It's like having that like real time sort of check-in. And then a few other little distinctions of how to check in or sort of like how to approach it. I think it's super awesome to have the writing stuff down. This is like a mental word based, the story of your life, what's going on today, all that's great. And you should also have basically what I'm going to call like a flow state check-in, which is just go on a walk. And it's not about writing anything down. It's just like, how do you think and how does your life show up when you're like out of the house, riding your bike, doing something that's wordless, right? Not listening to a podcast, not listening to music, like a wordless state where you're free, you're open, you're moving, you're not just like crowded up at your house, sitting at your desk, whatever it might be. It's a great way you might be surprised the stuff you write down and then you just go on a walk and that same stuff just kind of figures itself out really smoothly by like being in a flow state with it. I typically either will feel so overwhelmed, I'm like, great, I just need to go on a walk and talk it all out. And that's like a fun little flow state way to get into it. Or after doing my check-in and writing it all down, I'm like, okay, cool. I feel pretty clear on the state of affairs. Now let's go on a walk and see how all this kind of lands in my being now that I've kind of gotten it out. And then
The power of being bored.
Yeah, sure. Well, what do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that, because I'm not bored.
So a lot of people would say that going on a walk without music or something like that would be boring. So why would I
Oh.
do that? I'm going to throw music on and walk,
Oh.
or a podcast on and walk.
Oh,
But
interesting.
your brain doesn't have a time to rest in that
Yeah.
at that point, because it's sitting there thinking about something. So you don't have the piece of you being bored that helps you problem solve or close those loops yourself.
Sure. Oh, that's cool. That's cool to. I haven't really thought about. A long time ago, I heard that phrase, bored people are boring people.
Yeah.
And from that moment, I was like, well, I'm not a boring, like, I just don't identify with boredom, which I'm grateful for, but I can understand that maybe, but I think part of it too is like any open moment I do have where there's just nothing going on, I can be refining the vision of my life. I can be checking in with like, that's a very entertaining thing to do if it just is now something you love to do for yourself, versus I think some guys might start to get into this and be like, oh yeah, because I'm doing so many things wrong and I have to like make my life better, so I have to check in on myself and make sure that, that could be a frame, versus like, it's not there's no it's really fun to like check in on the stats of the character in the video game you're playing. Like, oh, I just beat that boss, I wonder where my stats are at now, right? Or I can't beat this boss, I wonder where my stats are at, and what, it's like, oh, I need more defense, that means I got to go back and cultivate some other things, right? So
Yep.
I'll use that as a great segue when you are checking in, to keep in mind the idea of pruning versus watering. As you're checking in, let it be okay that some stuff that shows up is stuff that is just ready to be cut, like elimination. It's coming up because it wants to be fucking removed from your awareness, right? And let that be okay. And you'd be surprised how many things, like a lot of the time people are like, all right, what are all the plates you're spinning right now? And they write down like 30 things, and half of them actually don't exist or don't matter, or are a 5-minute task. Like, oh yeah, I got to get back to my mom about that email she sent me. It's like, great, that takes 3 minutes and it's done. So it's like knowing what can be put in that, like, all right, let's ship it, let's prune it, let's be done with it. And then there's the watering side of it, which is like, oh, this thing's showing up. How is it showing up to be, to stay, to get more attention? It needs to be nurtured. This thing needs to really be, this isn't about getting rid of it, being done with it. It's about, man, this thing that's showing up needs some real attention. So just using that fun little analogy. And then the last one here, nitty gritty versus spaciousness as you're checking in, right? There's there's a time and a place to like really get into it and turn it into a task and put it on the timeline and figure out exactly how it wants to look and like map it all out and make it super clear. And sometimes that feels like the last thing you can do with all the stuff that's building up. So to also have a spacious way of checking in, it's similar to like the wordless space or the flow state thing, but don't put yourself in one rule, or you watch a YouTube video of a guy who's like, this is how I journal, and he does this thing, and then you're like, oh, I have to do that, versus letting yourself find that there's a whole spectrum of ways to do this. And hopefully I kind of illuminated some fun ways to look at it. And the rule for that I have is, the way I'm going to get connected to myself again and get clear again and feel like I have more capacity only ever comes from one of two directions. And you can always lean one way or the other. And simplest way to say that is like a yang versus yin, right? If you feel kind of stuck, either a really sweaty, heavy workout is going to lift you out of that, or taking a nap is going to lift you out of that. And if you don't know which one it is, and you'll instantly know which one it is as you check in more. You're like, oh, I definitely know this state needs to go on a run, or this state needs to like take a hot shower and like reset. But knowing that you can't lose if you try one. So if you're like, oh, maybe it's the nap, and you go lay there and you're 10 minutes in and you're just like, dude, there's no fucking way I'm going to take a nap like this, then you kind of know the energy's up there. So you want to move hot, or you go work out and it doesn't click. I think it's pretty easy to go, like when you start exercising, if you should be exercising, it takes 90 seconds to be like, oh yeah, okay, this feels pretty good. Like heart rate's going up and your body's like, oh, thank you. It like feels good to breathe a little heavier. And So as a man, it's like knowing you're always, all you have to do is try one and you'll know what you need to do next. So that's kind of how I check in a lot of different ways. And I love this prompt. I'm glad we got into this because I think it's super crucial. And it's the most dangerous thing for a man when he's not checked in, right? Like to not admit something that's been bothering you, you know, to not admit something you're starting to feel pretty sick and tired of. Because the thing you're feeling sick and tired of, automatically as a man, you kind of stuff it away somewhere. So unless you keep
Yes.
kind of bringing that up to remind yourself, then that shit fucking really hits you when you could have put out the fire when it was a lot smaller.
In fact, I'm skeptical if I talk to a man and they don't have a check-in process. Not skeptical that they're like a bad person or anything, but I'm like, because if you have a check-in process and there are glaring issues, bad marriage, bad relationship, alcoholism, really stuff that is rough. We're teaching guys to have a check-in process, but often with a lot of guys, that's going to lead right to the deep inner work. As soon as we say to a guy, let's check in, what's going on with your life? And oftentimes I can see they're tiptoeing around the big thing, or it's often what they don't say, because what they don't say is not what they're checking into themselves about. So, oh yeah, it's good. My kids are all right. We're making a lot of money. I'm using an example from my current life. I won't use names, but the guy makes a ton of money. Wife makes a ton of money. The kids are great, but nothing about the relationship with the wife. He's not telling me the relationship with the wife is great. So I'm like, what's going on with that? And now the can of worms starts opening. So I think that in our weekly meeting with the 3-minute check-in, the time limit really puts guys on the spot. I don't think in an uncomfortable way either. At least it hasn't been so uncomfortable yet. Presumably a guy just joined the group tomorrow and then came in and we were like, check in for 3 minutes. Then yeah, but we have better onboarding than that. We just tell us everything about your life in 3 minutes. No. It is a chance for a guy to demonstrate that he has been catching up with himself about throughout the week. Every time you come into our weekly meeting and you get 3 minutes, it's clear who has been thinking about themselves and their lives and doing a lot of the things Nathaniel just finished talking about. And he can, in a direct, unrushed way, perfectly fill that 3 minutes. And then the rest of the guys can witness it and go, yeah, you're doing great. Or a guy can say, wait a second, I want to follow up with you on something. I know a few weeks ago we had a thing with a guy who just went on and on and on and on. And you could tell that the 3-minute check-in turned into him doing the the checking in with himself that he should have been doing for a long time. He started going off about his wife and his father-in-law who was in town. And it's like, okay. And we gave him the space to do that. We're like, and then we said, okay, now do that on your own and come give us the 3-minute, because we just don't have time for everybody. So I love the check-ins in the group because it puts every guy on the spot to know, like, I'm going to be asked to demonstrate that I have been checking in with myself to some degree or not. And again, not to judge guys per se, but to we can see it. We can see a guy under fire, not under fire. That's too extreme, but just under the that's way too extreme.
All the guys are on fire.
They're all on fire. They are, but oh, I got 3 minutes to say what's pertinent. And then since guys have been in the program for a week, I know what I like to do is see that they're connecting the dot from week to week. What's the common thread in their life from week to week, and see if it randomly drops off one day. Hey, why don't you bring that up this week or whatever? Yeah. It's not a tool to get on guys' asses per se, but just to see really where they're at. And then for each guy to witness another man doing that is incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah. And it is to get on their asses though, right? Like
when necessary.
Yeah. But I think the whole process of checking in is the like respectable way that you're doing that for yourself so that it doesn't come to actually needing to get on your ass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And look, it's men's work. I think one thing we'll say over and over again is we're men. We're doing the iron. It's masculine energy. We're doing the iron sharpening iron thing.
Yeah.
We're doing the thing where we're being plain, direct, especially in the 3-minute check-ins. Get the emotions out of the way. Give us the facts. What's going on? Be powerful. Take ownership of your narrative and tell us what's going on. And then as men, if we feel wonky about it somehow, like this guy seems to be BSing himself, we'll call it out.
Yeah.
And right, that doesn't have to be this. It is getting on each other's asses, but that's what we do. And it's fine. And maybe that's something missing in the masculine world right now and something we stand for. One thing, checking in, I love what you said about it being before you need it. So as we introduce the concept of checking into guys, it often leads to deeper work, uncovering deeper shadow stuff. But ultimately, it is a process of getting to a place where it's preventative maintenance and you're staying ahead of yourself and you're putting out fires when they're small before they get big. And, just I'll end with this for now. A quote I heard several years ago was, orientation is the key to resourcefulness. So checking in with ourselves is orienting. Where am I? What am I up to? What's going on? Where am I? What am I up to? What's going on? All these on the big picture things of life, the big goals we set that are multi-year goals or multi-month goals. Orientation is the key to resourcefulness. So just knowing where I'm at, what's going on, allows resources to become available to me for what I need. And in our 3-minute check-ins in the group, we're all orienting with each other, and then we get to all share resources with each other. And that's a big part of we as the coaches in that space doing. We hear all the guys check in and we're like, oh, how about this resource? How about this resource? How about this resource?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody can give you that if they don't know where you are.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's important for us as coaches to be able to orient where somebody is, but it's more important for yourself to be able to orient where you are.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys come to us because their life is in need of some sort of leadership, or they want to step forward more as a leader. And it's nearly impossible to lead anyone else if you can't lead yourself. And so this being able to check in with yourself is kind of the first line of defense of cultivating your own leadership and cultivating leadership in general.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's been like just the check-in process for myself. I mean, I've been meditating for 20 years. So regularly for 20 years. And so a lot of my check-ins happen from a meditative state, and then having a journal there and popping out of meditation and writing something down. But to me, what the crux of this has to do with the leadership piece. It's like, if you want to be more of a leader in your life, for your family, for your business, in your business, you got to be able to do those check-ins on yourself to make sure that the loops are closed, like Nathaniel said, so that you can actually get the muck out of your head so that you can fill it with things that do need watered versus the things that are just kind of holding you back there.
Yeah. And most of those things, I think it was Neville Goddard who I heard this from, that anxiety and worry is actually just a lack of decisions. And most things men are anxious about are things they haven't made a decision about. Even if it's something you can't do anything about maybe yet, to then make the decision that you're going to stop being anxious about it until it's time to do something about it is a pretty helpful decision sometimes. Right. And I think it's important for guys to go in there to realize that and go teach yourself that. So anytime you catch yourself really caught up on something, it's like, oh, I'm really anxious about this because I just haven't decided when I'm going to start, or I haven't decided what it means, for this to be happening in my life, or I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this, or where I'm going to take this, or how this can be beneficial, or how this could be an asset, or how I haven't sat down to actually map out how I'm going to get rid of this problem in my life. So making the decision about the time you schedule with yourself to solve a problem feels infinitely better than just, right, oh, I'll solve that when I don't know, well, it's, you know, like putting something off, it just stays this open loop, and all open loops kind of fester. They ferment into something much more disgusting than you originally drank down, you know? So
Yeah.
the sooner you can do that, the better. So I think every guy listening to this right now probably thinks he has a way that he checks in with himself. You know, he's like, oh yeah, I kind of like sit there in the morning and scroll on my phone and drink my coffee and kind of get my day started. And I just kind of think about my plans for the day or whatever. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about. This is something much more deliberate, more intentional, more almost like I dare guys to make it more ceremonial, more ritualistic, something where it's like you get to really carve out a space and a time that's about like you being the screenwriter of your life, right? And like editing the script and what the hell, you know, being the creator of your life. And I think you could probably correlate, there's some ratio to a lack of guys giving themselves that time to create, right? And those guys have not having what they want in their life happening, right? And because it's like they're letting all that power get, you know, they're like giving all that power away to their circumstances instead of deciding every day what to do with the power they're given that day. And if you sleep good, you have more power
Yeah.
every day. So it all
You know,
kind of it all stacks up on itself, and then you can fucking actually create some stuff.
It does stack up, and I will explicitly advocate for coming in and giving our men's group a shot, because if you're someone that hasn't had a regular practice of checking in or orienting with yourself, that's definitely how I think about it. It can be very challenging at first. It is. It's something worth getting some professional help on, and that's what we're here offering for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I will reiterate this, starting a practice of checking in is nothing short of a real spiritual practice. It will go that direction if you keep it up, because you will uncover blind spots. You will uncover opportunities to frankly be embarrassed and be humbled as you catch up with yourself and go, oh, not everything has been fine and dandy in certain ways. It can also be very positive. So I don't want to be negative Nancy right now, but I taught journaling directly for years, just help people starting a journaling practice. And what I didn't even realize when I started that was really this is what I was doing, helping people not confront demons, helping people
Maybe
start a
sometimes.
spiritual practice, like their own private spiritual practice. But it often was demons, because half the people I worked with that came to me, like, I open up my journal and there's a blank page, I don't know what to do. Half had their journals violated, had a brother, often a parent or a sibling in their household, find their journal and read it behind their back, and they lost trust. So in just being like, I'm going to sit down with my journal and start writing, I have to confront the betrayal I got from family. And that's very prevalent. I would say it's probably more prevalent with women, to be honest, but I don't want to assume that. It felt that way when I was coaching, and it seems obvious, but I don't want to assume that. So if you're a man, you're like, I don't want to do that, and because it's someone violated your privacy at some point, it's just bam, that clear sometimes.
Yeah.
And then also people started sitting down and they're scared of going at the blank page because they're scared what's going to come out. And that's where I would say, if you're one of those people that's just looking at the blank page and like, I don't know what to write down, that's silly. There's a million things to write down. The captain's log format is what you can just do and start writing down. So if you really feel stuck, our men's group is explicitly a place to come and get unstuck on that and start really learning how to orient, check in with yourself, and see lots of other guys doing it in their own authentic ways every week.
Sign me up.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
well,
wondering.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm wondering if, I mean, women are taught to have a diary or journal. So I'm wondering if that's the reason why more women have had that privacy violated than men,
I
because
think
men
they
don't.
do it more often.
Yeah,
They just
yeah,
statistically had more.
Yeah.
I was just very fortunate in the elementary school I went to have starting third grade, to have third grade and my fourth grade, and then my fifth grade teacher really turn it up, and I just took to it. And I was very fortunate to have that cultivated and at a young age, and it worked for me.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
certainly the statistics bear out that women are doing that more and more. But I'm a coffee shop guy. When I go to coffee shops, I think I see equally men and women journaling now. It's certainly picked up.
Yeah.
So maybe you're someone that already has a robust journaling practice, and you're like, oh yeah, I already do that. It can be very useful to come into the group setting and say, okay, demonstrate your mastery of your self-orientation in front of a group of men, and have it optimized, have it validated,
Yeah.
get even more out of it. Because certainly one of the biggest pitfalls of journaling is you don't get feedback. And so you can bullshit yourself.
Totally.
Any self-orientation check-in practice, like if you're not sharing it, you can easily be bullshitting yourself, which is why I love every week guys get to come in and at least know they're going to have 3 minutes to get it all out and have other men's eyes on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably assume you're bullshitting yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would
that's-
agree. I agree with, dude, I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think, I think we're all bullshitting ourselves to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if you're
100%.
tired of all the bullshit and you want to turn it into some good manure, come on over to masterfulman.com, where it's an amazing crew of alchemists or composters, however you want to put it, right? It's like bringing all these different guys together, getting everyone's feedback. We had a guy join recently who was in around a couple years ago, and it's cool to see, how someone who already has the Masterful Man orientation, how they come back into the group and just kind of turn it all back on, and you
Yes.
can tell that they're already been a Masterful Man. And then
And
it's
they
wonderful
needed it.
too. Exactly. They needed it. And it's powerful to see too that like just maybe saying like he should have not been gone for a year and a half or whatever.
It does feel, no, you're right. It does
it's an
feel that way.
ongoing, this is an
Would've-
ongoing
yeah.
kind of practice, and I love how relentless we are about it being every week. There's really not a week where we skip the check-in, and because it's that vital for people. So there's some guys maybe hearing this and curious what it's all about. If you're hearing this and you want to come check out a check-in, just off of this episode right now, if you message any of us and share the secret word orientation, somehow you say in your message, we'll let you just come on to one call so you can come check it out. Like, I think there might be some guys listening who are like, I don't know if I want to do all this yet. And it's like, great, just come see what we do and we'll let you in on one call. You got to come check in with us. We'll all check in. And then if you like the group, you can stick around. We'll sign you up for a membership. We'll get all that going. But I think there's guys listening to this episode in particular who are like, I know I need to check in with myself more. That's cool that these guys do it every week. I want to come see what that's like. I want to come try it. And that's my gift as the whatever authority I have to do that. I'm waving my
Solace clause.
yeah. And with that said as well, another great way to check in with yourself is the Beast Code at thebeastcode.com. That's a free resource that we made. It's a 14-day challenge, actually, that gives you like a daily process to help you feel really awesome. The captain's log is part of that process. So if you want us to kind of walk you through a fun way to be checked in the morning, in the middle of the day, and in the evening for 14 days and kind of get a masterful man holding your hand through that process and kind of kicking your ass through the process, go check out the Beast Code. That's a lot of fun. And and then just continuing to follow us on Instagram. All of our links should be in the show notes. That's another great, choosing to curate what's in your feed is either helping you check in, right, or helping you check out. And that's huge. So last little, PS, if you need to unfollow the thirst traps, if you need to unfollow the stupid content, like guys, whatever, throwing rocks into the frozen lake, like I know it's cool. But what if every time you went on social media, you're just being reminded to get back into your life? And I posted my first thread today and asked everyone how they're breathing, because I don't, it's like I want to get you back in touch with yourself. So happy to check in with you guys for another episode. Thanks everybody for listening in. Go journal your guts out and let us know how it goes. We'll see you next time.